Teaching Tip Tuesday. And we're live, and all of my tech went off actually like it was supposed to. I'm pleased because last week I had some technical difficulties. But anyway, let's go ahead and get started. My name is Michelle Williams, aka the Ignited Teacher, and this is Teaching Tip Tuesday. And if you're new here, what I do here on Teaching Tip Tuesday is I help math teachers, if you're a math teacher, who teach struggling learners. That could be 504 students, special education students, and just students that are below grade level. I help you all to increase student achievement through classroom management, technology integration, math, teaching strategies, project-based learning, and response to intervention. And that's what I do here on Teaching Tip Tuesday. You can catch me here every Tuesday night at 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. And guess what? If you can't catch me live, you can always catch me on the replay, either on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, not on Instagram because Instagram does not allow third-party apps. But I am on Instagram, but Facebook, or if you're in my Facebook groups, you can catch me there and the replay as well. So welcome, welcome, welcome. So before we get started, I wanted to talk about a few things that is happening with my business. You know that I'm about to launch my Math Intervention Academy. Yay! I'm so excited about that because it is a much needed tool for teachers. And I will be spearheading that. It will be launching and coming out next month, right after the week after 4th of July. And I'm excited about that because it's something that I know will help teachers to help students. And it's going to propel students in the right direction, where the children are not just passing and the kids that are passing just keep passing, and the kids that are failing, and there's never any room where the children make up any ground. If you don't know my story, my son was a struggling learner in mathematics. He was not in reading. He actually, when he was in seventh grade, he was reading post high school. So his reading level was very high, but his math he struggled with from a very, very early age, which I knew around about the end of first grade that he was going to have an issue with math long term because I had been teaching by that time. So that's my story, and let's go ahead and dive in. So today, if you are not familiar with me, I'm going to be talking about a blog post that I recently wrote, actually last week. And if you're not familiar with my blog post, I put the link to my blog post on the screen, well, the URL to my blog post on the screen, at fuelgreatminds.com. Each week I put out a new blog post and I center them around themes. So my website is broken down into categories, those 5 categories that I talked about, helping you all to teach math and increase your student achievement through those 5 different things. And that's from my 20 years of experience, that's what it takes to really get children to moving. Um, so that's where you can find this blog post that I'm going to be talking about tonight. Let's go ahead. So the name of the blog post is called Evening the Playing Field with Math Intervention. As you can see my face, my hair is up, but I look the same. And we're talking in the blog post, I talk about my experience when in my first year entering this private school. A lot of people don't know that I went to private school for a very, very long time. So the fact that I am a public school teacher, um, it seems a little odd. And every time I tell people that I went to private school, I don't think I went to public school until my junior year, my last 2 years of high school. So that's my story. So I talk about entering a private school that was predominantly white. Obviously, I'm not white. And my teacher, my Algebra 1 teacher, I remember this conversation when I was writing this blog post. It just popped in my head. I can remember my Algebra 1 teacher having a conversation with my mother saying that she felt like I was going to struggle with Algebra 1 because the students had been there for a long time and a lot of them had come up through the school, had been there from elementary on. And I think she asked my mother, I forgot about this. She asked my mother, had I taken pre algebra? And I don't think I had at the time. So, um, but she said that I was going to struggle. But here's the thing, she never offered me any support at all. And I can remember not really struggling in the class, but like with the Algebra 1 word problems, I can remember kind of saying, well, I don't understand this. And she would come over to explain, but there was no interest in saying, okay, let me help you. Even though she knew that I was going to have difficulty starting out. She didn't know what type of student I was, but she knew that I had was going to have an issue. And that's the thing that we um actually deal with every day when we're working in urban settings, and you know that your students are coming from low socioeconomic backgrounds, kids with who have moved schools several times. And I hear teachers, especially secondary, and I know it's a challenge. I'm not trying to um, dog the secondary teachers in any way, so I don't want you to think that. But I in secondary, they feel like, okay, well, the children are behind. Yes, you know that, just like my teacher knew that I was behind. But in order to level the playing field for Black and brown students in urban settings, in suburban settings that have look-alike populations of an urban setting, they must have an intervention. I don't care what you think the children are supposed to have. They have to have intervention. And if they're behind, there's no way that they can catch up without the intervention. And I know, I think in a one of the Facebook groups I had, there's a teacher that asked a question. She was like, "Well, my principal wants me to do small group," and she just had no clue. And that's part of the issue as well. Administrators, a lot of them who are not instructional and don't have the support on the campus to teach and support teachers in implementing small group. Now, tier 2 instruction is small group instruction, but is it every day? No, it is not every day. And I think that's the misconception, that math intervention or any type of intervention has to be all the time. And it's not. That is the furthest from the truth. What you're trying to do is give students additional support in the area that they need it. Now, let's go back to support. I live here in Houston, and the Mattress Mac, which is who's very popular in Houston, is opening up a school for students that need like for construction work or technical fields. if I'm not mistaken. So my thing is, I have a problem with that. For one reason is when you're talking about technical fields, you're targeting a certain demographic of students. Those students just don't come with, oh, we want to be in the construction field. We want to do this. No, they come with additional things where they need support. And that's no different from math intervention. Your interventions are not just going to target math, it targets everything. And that's why my math, everything I talk about is a little different. I talk about response to intervention, math strategies, we talk about culturally responsive teaching. All of those things come into play to support that one student. It may not be that they need a whole bunch of math support, but they do need help in building their self efficacy. And so, what pains me to see is people trying to support students in the area of math intervention and they don't have all the tools. So, when you provide intervention for students and it is successful, that you are leveling the playing field for them. And some of you might be saying, well, what are you doing? What do you mean by leveling the playing field? You are giving them the opportunity to actually compete with their suburban peers or the peers at the nice new school in your school district, because there are inequities in school districts. We have them. We have certain parts of our school district that gets most of the funding and have all of the technology that they need, but you give them the opportunity to actually do that. So that's what math intervention does for the students. And if you're saying, well, they should come with this, and your teacher should have taught you this, but here's the reality of it: they don't come with it. And the numbers are 40% of my students, and probably less than that, come to my classroom on grade level. That's when I was teaching fifth grade. Now, since I moved to the high school and I teach and support Algebra 1 students, they are not on grade level. The students that I service have never, for the most part, passed a standardized test. And that's why I go back to the kids that are failing continue to fail. If there's no intervention, if the school does not have a strong intervention, even on down to even if the school doesn't have a strong intervention, if you don't have an intervention program set up in your classroom, the children will not succeed. They will always be one step behind their peers. And some of the kids just need support. I have seen students come to me that may have failed standardized tests before, but when I got them, the instruction and the support that I gave them, they went to sixth grade on grade level. Sometimes it takes a year, and sometimes it's just a gap in learning. And if you don't do the interventions, then it's not there. And especially for Latino students, because sometimes with them, they get really quiet. And one of the things, my friend and I, she's a Latina, and we talk about that. I do not like it when teachers say, oh, they're such a good kid. They don't talk. They just do the things that I. No, we want children to use their voices. We want children to engage with us and have conversation. If you're happy that your kids comply all the time, then that's a problem. It really is, because the students have to know how to give pushback. And in this day and age, we have to amplify their voices and give them a space to practice using their voice. But if you're silencing the children in your classroom and you're praising them because they're silent, that's a problem. And the kids, they have to advocate for their learning. So when my students go to middle school and when they leave me, they know how to talk to other adults. And that's how we level the playing field, by taking some of those obstacles away through the math intervention. And I know some people will say, because my neighbor told me, we were talking about, you know, how I support my students. And she was like, well, that's not your responsibility, but I care about my students. And I told her that. I said, sometimes they don't come with what they need. And I'm their teacher. And that's part of what I do with them to support them. They need the intervention, whether it be discipline or math. Math intervention is holistic. It is not just focusing on the math. If you have a student who's disengaged for whatever reason, you cannot get the content in them. They're not going to learn it. If you're using a strategy where the students don't understand it and they're connecting with it, and you keep trying to hammer that same strategy in, the students, they're not going to get it. So you're leaving them behind, because here's the playing field and your student is always going to be here. Now, let's move on to where we talk about standardized testing. So it's fun when testing at the end of the school year. I always look in the Facebook groups that I'm a part of, and I start looking at how the teachers, and it's like, oh, I'm so disappointed that my students didn't do well, but they did so well in class. Well, they couldn't have, because I know I teach some children that have gaps this big. I know that. And I make sure that my kids can show me that they can master these concepts when I have them in my interventions. They can't exit without mastering the concept. That means no prompting, no help from me. That's is you and your thoughts. So if your students are not performing on these standardized tests the way that you want to, and you feel like you've done all that you can, there's something that's missing. And that's what my Math Intervention Academy will do. It'll help connect what's missing and get those kids. And it's not about testing. I know some people will say, well, you're promoting testing. I'm promoting getting the kids to succeed. I the first semester, and you can ask my colleagues, I don't harp on testing. I don't, because the kids, I had a class, bless their hearts, I had to stop teaching my problem solving strategy to teach them how to problem solve. They didn't know we had a problem solving strategy until November, because I had to teach them how to problem solve first. And then we put the problem solving strategy we follow here. But I had to teach them how to think through a problem first and dissect it and pay attention. And when I tell you, on their test, where it talked about analyzing, I think that's in those process skills, my kids grew. I said, so if your stuff is not, the way you're teaching is not showing up, then there's a disconnect and your students going to be left behind. But math intervention is a way that we as educators can change the narrative for Black and Latino students. It is the way, it is the only way. And unfortunately, if you're working in an urban school, or if you're working in a suburban school where you have a demographic that looks like an urban school's demographic, interventions are a non-negotiable because the students need them. And I know some administrators have this idea of intervention. It's not that. I think we need to go back to what response to intervention is. I feel like the math workshop model and guided math has muddied the water and taken away from what true math intervention is. The goal of math intervention is to accelerate and close gaps. That's the goal. It's strategic and it's data driven. And you have to have those things in place. And unfortunately, it's our students need it, because they will not have a fighting chance if that support is not in place. So That brings me to this. You can get on the wait list on my Math Intervention Academy. You can go to mathinterventionacademy.com. And I have where you can type in your email and you'll be getting some different blog posts. And I send out emails every Saturday. So a lot of them are going to be talking about different things. I'm just kind of acclimating you to what math interventions are. So the link is in the description on one of them. I don't think it's on YouTube. So if you're watching YouTube and you're watching it live, I have to go back and put the link in it. But you can get on the wait list. And like I said, the Math Intervention Academy will launch the second week or right after the 4th of July. So that's all I have for you on this Teaching Tip Tuesday. If you want to check out my blog post, you can definitely check it out at fieldgreatminds.com. And well, if you're on your mobile device, you have to click on the bars. There's about 3 or 4 bars you click on, and a drop down menu will pop up. If you're on your desktop, you can just click the blog post and click the blog link, and it has different categories that you can click. You'll click the response to intervention category, and it will take you to the blog post that I was talking about tonight. So I will see you all next week or in one of my live streams or on Instagram, some one of those social media platforms. If not, then I'll see you next week for Teaching Tip Tuesday. Bye-bye.